speaking to you from beautiful Philadelphia. We all know what it's like. We're watching a film or reading a book and the stakes are high. We're on the edge of our seat. What is happening in the story, it seems like it's very likely that there could be a great win or a great loss. And these are the stories we remember, and that effect, when the stakes are high. How, as writers, can we make the stakes high in our own stories? Approach number one. First of all, you can ask yourself that question: how do I make the stakes higher? Write your story. Don't worry about it. Don't think about it. Just be in the story, write it, enjoy it, let the creativity flow. Don't think about why you're writing what you're writing. Just you're creating a new story that is interesting to you, and don't analyze it. You have finished first draft. Now, one of your drafts, and really you should do more than one draft. You should do more than two drafts. You should do, the more the better. One of those drafts should be where you sit down and you write the question down. How do I raise the stakes? And then as you go through, look at your story, analyze it, and try to come up with creative ways of making the stakes higher. When we think about a story where the stakes are high, we usually think about that one point in the story, that one particular climax where it does, where the coin is flipped and heads or tails could be win or loss. We're thinking about that one moment in the story. But actually, the stakes, raising the stakes, most often happens way before that point. And in order to raise the stakes is a matter of a lot of creative decisions we can make well beforehand. So when you're devoting a draft to making the stakes higher, think very clearly about what is at stake, what stands to be gained, what stands to be lost. You don't have to make these things clear in the story. You don't have to make them stand out in the story. They can be part of an undertone in the story, but when we're working out a plot and story ourselves, we need to think very clearly about these things. Take a look at your story and make a list. What can be gained? What can be lost? Now, a climactic moment in the story can be a lot more ambiguous than what can be gained and what can be lost. There could be many different things that happen. There could be someone who is presented as an adversary that somehow turns out to play in favor of the protagonist. Many different interesting things can happen, but it's helpful often to look at it in terms of losses, wins. You have your list of what can be gained and what can be lost, and often what you can do is go back in your story and enhance those. So the town is below this dam that is cracking, and if the protagonist can go out there and fix the crack, the town is going to be saved. Well, if in the story that town is neglected, isn't looked at as much, that town is what is at stake, what can be lost. So way before, the dam is cracking and it's a last minute rush and it's very likely that it'll burst. Well before that, if you make more clear what this treasure represents, what that town, what is wonderful about that town, what about that town makes the reader want that town to survive, what is interesting to the reader about the town, what characters in the town will the reader like to know about and care about. Ask yourself, what are significant and insignificant losses? So if you have a character who was in a gunfight and gets shot and then has to wear a bandage, Yeah, I mean that in a way that's a big deal. That would be a big deal, but in terms of it being in a work of fiction, it isn't that significant because it has not drastically changed the circumstances of that character. It has not introduced great handicaps to that character. It has not thwarted the character's plans. A significant loss or win is one where it changes the story. You have a character who is in certain circumstances and can do and can't do certain things, and is working for and against certain forces in his or her life. But if there is a gain or loss, it could elevate them, or it could they can promote them or demote them. It can mean that suddenly they can fly, and they can before they were stuck in a town, and now they can go have all these new experiences, and their life has changed significantly. Or it could be that they had their own jet and they could do what they wanted to, but suddenly they lost everything, and they're stuck on one highway, and it would take them days to get to the next town. These are situations where the gains and losses are significant. It isn't just that, ouch, it hurts very much, or yay, this is wonderful. It's about how it really determines the circumstances your characters are in. Appreciate that the things that are precious to your protagonist can be seen as weaknesses, can be seen as the Achilles heel, as what makes your protagonist in danger of getting hurt. And one thing used a lot is where a character protagonist has a family, has a child, and these are things that, oh, if those were lost, that would be a major blow. And I bring it up only because it happens all the time. But you can get really creative about this. You can think about, the protagonist could have a key to a building where all these amazing radio equipment is, and if they that they have that key in their pocket, and that represents a weakness. So if they lose that key, the readers are going to feel that. So when you give the protagonist or another character something precious, come up with creative way. Why is it so important? Why is it precious? If it's like a book of maps, the reader will in their mind, they'll think, wow, that's great, this book of maps. It all of a sudden gives whoever has that book the power to go places they couldn't have gone, and the power to discover things they would have no idea existed before. But at the same time, it's this item that could get damaged by rain, and so it represents this element in the story that is precious and is at risk of being lost or damaged. Okay, let's say that you're working on a story, and someone at the beginning of the story plants a garden, and then other things happen, and towards the end of the story there's a great tornado and it is threatening to ruin their garden. Okay, that sounds like a story. But basically, in the way I described it, the precious thing, the garden, is introduced in the beginning and then kind of forgotten. Now, if it's a precious thing, then it is something that, when they're planting the garden, let's say that there are weeds, so the character has to go out and weed, and let's say that a pipe broke, so there's some flooding, so that needs to be taken care of because, a third of the plants were drowned. And so it isn't like that precious thing is introduced and then forgotten until when it's needed during the climactic moment. It's in a tenuous position, and it's something that the protagonist is caring for and harboring and nurturing and taking care of. So it becomes a more important point of loss or maintaining. If what is at stake is the possibility of something can be won, build up well beforehand what that possibility is. If it is a lot of money, that money could some of that money could be to take care of the protagonist's mother who has cancer, or it could be to, what is that money going to be used for? Why is that win? What about that win is going to improve and change the circumstance of your characters? Tenuous situations elevate the feeling that the stakes are very high in the story. So it isn't as simple as the character goes to play bingo and wins, or the character is in a fight and loses. It's a situation where there is something that is being taken care of, and one thing may go wrong about that thing being taken care of. If it's a hospital, there was a fire in the left wing. If it is a plane, the radio goes out on the plane. It isn't win or lose. It's a tenuous situation. If your story takes the reader from tenuous situation to tenuous situation, you'll get the reader involved. You'll make the reader want to care for what is happening in the story, want to go and take care of what needs to be fixed, to want to go after what could be gained, to want to build up what the protagonist is trying to build up. And these tenuous situations are where the little things that make the whole thing work are being taken care of, and add it all together. It goes along. All these different changes that take place in the story can build up to that great loss or that great win. I've said it before, sometimes the best thing to do is torture your protagonist. Become your protagonist's greatest enemy. You can do it at the beginning so that what happens at the conclusion of the story is a totally different deal. But if you go ahead and seriously mess up your protagonist's life, that could be the greatest thing, and this is counterintuitive to how writers feel when they're starting out a new story. This can be the best thing you can do for your story. This can be exactly the thing that is going to make your readers hooked on that protagonist, is to have them lose a leg or something really awful to where they're really struggling at some point in the story. Often you can make the stakes in your story seem very high just by having the story adhere to laws. If it's a reality-based story, ask yourself, would that really happen? Make sure that you check your facts in the story. A person who is hit by a car should seem real. If the story doesn't seem real, if it doesn't feel like the laws of nature are applying to what happens in the story, then the readers aren't going to feel it as much. Okay, if I told you that someone in my real life got hit by a car, that would have a bigger impact on you than if I told you that Bugs Bunny was hit by a car. We know that people in the real world are subject to the laws of nature. This is why we care about events that we are told about in the real world. And if you bring that kind of integrity to your fiction writing, if it's a reality-based story, it really ups the stakes if you really check the facts, if make sure, if your protagonist is trying to stop a car that's racing away and they shoot a BB gun and it blows the tire out, the reader is not going to feel that would really happen. And so the narrative is not going to impact them as much as it would if you bother to make it as real seeming as possible. And if you're writing a story that is not based in the physical world, make sure that it's still, that there are some laws at play that give it that same feeling, so that as the reader is reading the story, they feel the impact of what is happening. They feel like it, whatever happens in the story, if there's going to be a loss, it's going to be a real loss. I hope I've said something that you can use in your creative writing. If you like my videos and want to get me back, please hit the like button, subscribe, leave a comment, and tell a friend. Also, if you get the chance, please go to solomation.com, check out my illustrated fiction, put in video format as episodes for free for you to view. Do you have any comments about this subject? This is not at all a definitive video on this. I'm sure that it's just an introduction. There are so many undiscovered ways to build up the stakes in story writing. If you have any ideas, please leave a comment. I hope your writing goes great, and have a good day.